don't ask how to make another person happy, because here's my answer: you can't. Welcome. I appreciate you tuning back in. I am Wakeman. I'm a drama researcher, and today's show is about one of my favorite topics: accountability. So many people are throwing this word around in the workplace, and so few understand what it actually means. It's a big topic, so we're just going to start that discussion today with Jackie Freund from Home and Said Senior Care, and also in our first question of the day. This question comes from Catherine. She says, have you identified tools or interview questions to help us identify the higher accountable people during the interview process? For asking this question, we sent you our guide to behavior-based interviewing that tests for emotional expensiveness. So accountability is one factor in that. First of all, when you're hiring, there's 3 ways to look for and test on accountability. First is in the interview process. Ask behavior-based questions and ask them in specific ways. One of my favorite is simply, tell me about a time where you weren't able to produce the results you had promised or committed to. Now, I don't ask the second part of that question prematurely because people change their answers. I just ask, tell me about that time. And I listen for how many times they say the word I, and they say things like, I chose, I assumed, I denied, I didn't, I did. This is different. Most of you interviewing don't like people using the word I. I love people using the word I. So I listen to their answers. I actually make check marks how many times they use the word I. If their answers sound like this, well, first of all, I need to let you know that my boss was crazy and no one there was held accountable and we didn't have the resources. Okay, they're not my highest candidate at this point. I listen to their answer, and if they didn't quite get to the accountability piece, I'll say, and what was your part in that lack of success? And I listen again. If they can identify it, if they can let me know what their part was, and I'll give them a third chance. Let's say, well, you've talked a lot about the circumstances and about some of the challenges, but I'm just wondering, what was your piece in not delivering what you promised on? And then I basically grade that answer based on how accountable they were, how much ownership they had. I don't stop there. The second thing I like to do is actually test people's accountability. There was one time I was interviewing with a CEO for his assistant, and we were in New York City. And we intentionally tested these folks to see how they responded to challenges. So when we knew that they were on the way to the interview, about a half hour before the interview was scheduled, I would have the assistant call them and let them know that the location of the interview had changed. And we're talking big changes, like east side of the park to west side of the park. And we would just notice how they handled that. If they were resilient and if they just jumped in and made it happen and got to the interview in spite of the challenges, that was a great test of their accountability level. If they came in complaining, that was one thing. If they came in apologizing and taking responsibility for their inability to get there on time, that was another thing. So 1, interview, behavior-based questions. 2, test people. In this show's roundtable, I am thrilled, Jackie, that you stopped by. This is Jackie Freund. She's from Home and Said Senior Care, and I am not even lying when I say they're absolutely one of my favorite clients. So Jackie's HR director, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Cy. I'm delighted to be here.
So you've been using reality-based leadership philosophy for about 4 years, and what differences have you seen?
So when we brought it into our workplace just at the right time, the employees were hungry for that next level, how they could improve themselves, how they could get better.
And you guys were really growing at the time too.
Very much so. So one of the things that an employees really latched onto was that idea of personal accountability, and that's been so impactful in our organization. As people have conversations around that, we hear people talking about commitment, about resilience,
I love
about
it.
continuous learning and ownership. So it's just been wonderful because it's given the employees we have great employees the opportunity to really even step it up to the next level.
Is there some specific things besides the conversation? I know the language has really changed that you've been able to see, because we've worked a lot on accountability. You've even used our engagement survey that filters on accountability.
Yep.
How is that different than other surveys you've used in the past? What did it add to your kind of HR repertoire?
Well, what we love about it is we can really focus in on what's important to our high accountables, and we also want to see what group of employees, where do we need to focus our efforts on, because what we found with other employee engagement surveys is you just get all the data and you're not sure if you're making the right decisions. You're not sure if you're focusing on what's really important, what's really going to drive engagement. So with the reality-based employee engagement survey, we can really hone in and focus on what we need to do differently, and even drill down to our different departments, because we have some departments that one department may need to work on. They hear back from their employees, oh, we want more collaboration. So in that instance, it's the leader sitting down and saying, okay, we've heard you want more collaboration, so what does that look like? What do you plan to do to help make that happen?
And that's the key. That's the key, because what you guys have been able to do is to basically ditch the drama by not listening as much to your low accountables and really hearing the high accountables. But what you said, I love that you guys have done this, is when you're asking for action planning, you're not just asking like, what do you want different? You're asking, what can you do to make that happen? So it's not just a list you give the leaders, it's the leaders really saying, folks, if you want that, how do you create that? How do you make that happen? And your leaders have used that so well. And so how do employees respond to that? Because basically they want the leaders just to fix it, and you're not doing that.
Oh, our employees have been so open to it because one, they love being asked. They love that we listen, because not only do we survey, we action plan, we follow up,
Yeah, you guys do a great job.
And then they've just really latched onto, you know what, we're all in this together. This is a partnership. So what do you bring to the table? And what can we bring to the table to make change? And so when we measure our engagement survey every year, what we found over this last year is our number of high accountables has increased by 4%.
That's an amazing gain. So what we're able to show companies, just for viewers, is what percent of your employees are high accountable, medium, and low accountable. And we want to work on two things: pleasing the high accountables, engaging the high accountables, but growing accountability. And you guys have increased that piece of the pie 4%. That's, it may not sound like a lot, folks, but a lot of people only have 10% high accountables. And if you increase that 4%, I mean, that could be like a 40% gain in the number of people you have that share responsibility with their leaders and the organization to make things better. That's awesome. What did the rollout look like in your organization? Because there's no perfect rollout.
So our employees were really open to it, and we came at it from a perspective of a place of growth and development and love. Basically saying, particularly when you start talking about high accountables, average accountables, and low accountables, people are like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And we're not running around labeling people by any means. It's just that thought process of how are you getting results as an employee? How can you get better? How can you add more value? Because that's gonna just be wonderful for us. And at the same time, you're growing and developing yourself and preparing yourself for that next step.
Absolutely. And I think that, we tend to bucket people or their behaviors in states of like low accountability, medium accountability, and high accountability. And we do that because we can actually measure accountability, but the same person can actually be in different states of accountability throughout their career or throughout their day. Jackie, it is just always a pleasure. Anytime I get to interact with you or any of the Home Instead Senior Care folks, they're fabulous. Again, one of my favorite clients. I love that you stopped by for the roundtable today. Make sure and tell everybody I said hello.
I will, Cy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. Make sure that if you've got questions, you're asking those in the comment section below. I would love to be able to answer those on a future show. Here's a tip. Many of you are asking questions about how to make another person happy or how to diffuse the drama without upsetting anyone. I want you to really reflect on your questions before you ask them and get really specific. And also, don't ask how to make another person happy, because here's my answer: you can't. I get lots of questions on how can I address drama in the workplace but not upset anybody. Folks, addressing drama in the workplace is your business. Whether or not someone's upset, their business. You can't do things with the motive of keeping everybody happy. You will upset some folks. You will tick some folks off. That's not your business, nor is it within your control. You can't change another human being. Now, one thing you can do is to stop enabling another. So a lot of people, when they ask me, Sai, how do I get somebody to stop doing this? I tell them you can't, but what you can do is stop enabling them. And you enable people to continue their behavior when you remain silent, when you overreact, when you gossip about them, when you don't address it. Here's the bottom line, leaders. If you have an issue, you hired it or you allow it, and this all comes back to you. So if you want help on how you can be a better leader or a better employee, I'm all ears. But just be careful that you're not focusing your questions on how I can change another or how I can make sure another person doesn't get upset. Your job is to live life happy and drama-free, even when it's messy. Their job is to figure out how to stop responding negatively. So I look forward to your questions, and remember, life's messy, live happy.